There is a real possibility that history could be made on the night of April 29th, which marks the 2021 NFL Draft, if 5 quarterbacks are taken in the first 10 spots. It has never happened before, but after today's trade between Miami and San Francisco, that seems like a real possibility. And over the past few months, there have been endless debates on the top 5 quarterbacks in the draft and where each one should be ranked. Not only that, but there have been debates on whether some teams should take quarterbacks or stick with their current option. All of that and more will be answered in this edition of The Tailgate. With that being said, what's going on, guys? My name is Michael. Thank you so much for being here. Today, I'm going to break down the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL draft this year and where I think all 5 of them will end up. There is so much NFL content to talk about, and I will be covering a new piece every single Friday. So if you enjoy NFL content, make sure to subscribe and check out all of the links in my bio to see all of my other sources of content. Without further ado, though, let's get right into the video. In case you don't know who the 5 quarterbacks are, I don't want to leave you in the dark. So the 5 are Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson, Zach Wilson out of BYU, Justin Fields out of Ohio State, Trey Lance out of North Dakota State, and Mac Jones out of Alabama. All 5 of them are extremely talented, and any 5 of them could succeed in the NFL. With that being said, though, I highly doubt all 5 of them will succeed. There probably will be 1, 2, possibly 3 of them that just won't pan out or won't live up to expectations. That's the harsh reality of the NFL. Looking back at the past 20 NFL drafts, only 44% of quarterbacks taken in the first round have justified their value per selection. I'm saying that because I'm basing my rankings entirely off of what we saw in college, regardless of what I think they can do or will do in the NFL. At number 5, I have Trey Lance. Don't get me wrong, this guy's potential is through the roof, but as high as his potential is, his floor is just as low. He is arguably the most mobile quarterback out of the 5, and he has an absolute cannon of an arm. There's no denying. This guy, if he were to come into the NFL, he'd probably have a top 7 to top 10 just based off of arm strength talent in the NFL. But his accuracy and his football IQ are a big warning sign to me if I'm an NFL scout. A few more of my concerns stem from the fact that he only had 1 year of high-level play. And unlike schools like Clemson and Ohio State, North Dakota State really wasn't facing very good competition. Even though decision-making was questionable at times, he still had 28 touchdowns, passing touchdowns, with 0 interceptions, 0 fumbles, and 14 rushing touchdowns for a total of 42 total touchdowns. That's nuts. My player comparison for Trey Lance is Josh Allen. I think he can be a more mobile version of Josh Allen. A strong-armed guy isn't going to have an incredibly high completion percentage, but he has that big playability. And if you remember, when Josh Allen came into the NFL, he really wasn't a good quarterback. A lot of people were questioning whether he should even be a starter. That eerily reminds me of the same kind of volatility that Trey Lance has as a prospect. At number 4, though, I have Mac Jones. You could definitely make the argument and say that Mac Jones is the most NFL-ready quarterback out of all 5 of these guys. I mean, the stats speak for themselves. 77% completion percentage, 4,500 yards, 11.2 yards per attempt, 41 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. The reason I put Mac Jones ahead of Trey Lance is because I feel Mac Jones is more flexible as a quarterback. I think he can fit into many systems, whereas Trey Lance may only be able to fit into 4 or 5 systems, but if he is put in that situation, he'd be able to excel. I think if you surround Mac Jones with the right talent, he'd be able to succeed. Now, I know I'm speaking very confidently on behalf of Mac Jones, but he definitely has some fallbacks. The biggest downside that you will hear from other people is the fact that Mac Jones had probably the best talent in all of college football to throw the ball to. And yeah, I mean, there's no denying it. When you have Devontae Smith, who is the Heisman winner, you got Jalen Waddle on the other side of him, and you get to hand the ball up to Najee Harris, I mean, it's hard to fail in that system. But I feel that shouldn't take away from Mac Jones' successful 2020 campaign. He had a good year, and where I think that his ceiling is more limited compared to the other options at quarterback for this year's draft, he still will be a good quarterback in the NFL. My comparison for him is Ben Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger is not going to be able to move out of the pocket and be able to create 50, 60 rushing yards a game, but if you give him time in the pocket, he'll go through his reads and he'll find the best option. Neither of them have outstanding arms, and I think they're both similar in the sense where neither of them have really excel at anything. What I mean by that is Mac Jones doesn't have the biggest arm. That's probably Trey Lance. He's not the most mobile. That's also probably Trey Lance. He's not the most accurate. I'd say that's either Justin Fields or possibly Trevor Lawrence. But I think he's an all-around good quarterback with a very good football IQ. Now, I think 4 and 5 for most people are pretty interchangeable. I think Mac Jones and Trey Lance usually take the end of the top 5 list, and then it really comes down to who you think is at 2 and 3. And this answer has changed so much over the past few months. After the college football championship, people were having the debate on whether Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence should be the first pick of the draft based on how well Justin Fields performed in the Sugar Bowl. That debate has completely died off, and now it seems that Zach Wilson is the better prospect than Justin Fields, never mind Trevor Lawrence. But at number 3, I have Justin Fields. And I know I just got off saying that only a few months ago we were saying if Justin Fields was the best in the draft, but you just simply cannot deny Trevor Lawrence's and Zach Wilson's talent over Justin Fields. Fields is another quarterback that kind of checks off all the boxes. He's got a great accuracy, a pretty solid arm. He has a great ability to improvise. And honestly, I think that him and Zach Wilson have pretty similar traits. And actually, I would like to rephrase it. I think it's more of a 2A and a 2B. This is honestly how close I think these two quarterbacks are, and how I think both of them have a very good chance to succeed in the NFL. But the one separator between Justin Fields and Zach Wilson for me is that Justin Fields gets stuck on his first option a lot. And the reason I think that's a big difference maker between Zach Wilson and Justin Fields is because that's actually one of the things that Zach Wilson excels in, is his ability to move through his progressions and ability to survey the field. Now, the number one counter argument to that point is that Justin Herbert is an Oregon quarterback, and they are notorious for only looking at their first option. But the whole point is that that's an Oregon thing. That shouldn't reflect poorly on Justin Herbert's player profile. Oregon's system is set up for you to only look at the first option. Ohio State is not set up that way, which is why I think that surveying the field in the NFL is a very important trait that mainly all quarterbacks must have. Of course, this can be a coachable thing, something that just this isn't the only thing that will completely restrict Justin Fields from having a successful career. And that one point shouldn't really stain him as a prospect, because a lot of his game is unreal. He's unearthly accurate, and he's a very efficient quarterback. But until that issue is fixed, I don't know if I can put him over Zach Wilson. Which brings me to, of course, number 2, Zach Wilson. I mean, if you don't believe me, just watch the highlights. The guy's got a cannon for an arm, and like I said, he's so good at surveying the field and moving through his progressions. He's very accurate, and one thing that would pit him over Fields for me is his ability to move. And I'm not talking about overall speed, because I'm pretty sure Justin Fields ran like a 4.40 or something. I'm talking about being able to roll out of the pocket and improvise and still throw accurate passes. There are still some mechanical issues he has, like setting his feet in some circumstances, but it's nothing that some good coaching can't fix. I wouldn't even say he's as NFL ready as Mac Jones, because not only did I say, he has those mechanical issues, but also his level of opposition or competition was not nearly as good as one as Alabama, so he may need time to adjust to the NFL level before being thrust into a starter role. But again, I don't really think there are any problems that he has that are too blaring or will turn any NFL scout off. I think that any team would be blessed to have a guy like Zach Wilson. And the number 1, you guys already know who it is. It's Trevor Lawrence. I don't think there's ever been a flawless or a perfect prospect, but Trevor Lawrence might be the closest thing to it. I mean, if you just look at his draft notes, the biggest con he has is minor inconsistency in footwork. If that's his biggest problem, then he is a surefire prospect. Not like you already don't know, but just to go over some of the things that he does well. He has a very, very good football IQ. He's accurate on really all 3 levels. He's great on the deep ball. He also has a really good frame. He's 6'6". And unlike prospects like Trey Lance, who can be very inconsistent with the deep ball, even though they have an unreal arm, not only does Trevor Lawrence have a great arm, but he's also very accurate too. The only other downside I could maybe think of is that Clemson's offense was really good, but again, I don't think it'd be nearly as good without Trevor Lawrence there. I don't want to sit here and say that Trevor Lawrence is like head and shoulders above the rest of the quarterback competition in this year's class, but If you're saying anybody else is number one, I don't know. At this point, though, I want to go through the current draft order and give the teams that I think would be best fit for these 5 quarterbacks. So at number 1, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, there's no need in even theorizing about any other potential options there. At number 2, we got the New York Jets, and I think the best potential fit would be Zach Wilson. I think as of right now, he is also the front runner to be drafted by the Jets, but he just seemed like the best fit for them too. Even though New York did sign some receivers and some help over the offseason, I don't think it'd be enough for a quarterback like Mac Jones or even Trey Lance in order to succeed. Wilson will be able to use his legs to be able to evade pressure, because we all know that offensive line is very bad. And I think he'd also be able to provide the deep ball that has been missing from Sam Darnold's arsenal. At number 3, we got San Francisco, and I could see really any quarterback going here. Quarterbacks just seem to succeed in Kyle Shanahan's offense. We saw Matt Ryan turn into an MVP caliber player. Obviously, you have Jimmy Garoppolo. Players just seem to do well there. So honestly, I think any 5 of the quarterbacks could perform well there, especially Trey Lance. I said earlier that all he really needs is some good coaching and some ability to work through some of his mechanics, and he could be a very good NFL starter, and I think San Francisco would be great for him. More realistically, though, I think they could settle for Justin Fields. I also think Atlanta would be a very good place for Trey Lance. This is a team that really doesn't need a starting quarterback right now. Not only is Matt Ryan still a pretty solid, serviceable average starter in the NFL, but he also has about $42 million still left in his contract that the Falcons need to pay. So Trey Lance wouldn't really be starting this year, and probably for the good. He'd have a full year to be able to learn from a veteran quarterback and fix some of those mechanics. I'm just going to skip over Cincinnati, Miami, and Detroit, since it seems that all 3 of those teams are pretty set on their quarterbacks. I feel like Carolina would be a perfect spot for Mac Jones. It solves the big issue in questioning whether he can put out the same level of production at the NFL level if he weren't able to have the same level of talent at the NFL level that he had in college, if you could follow me there. And even with the loss of Curtis Samuel, I mean, look, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and Christian McCaffrey, that's enough to make Mac Jones a solid starter. If Trey Lance were the only quarterback left on the table, I could definitely see the Panthers potentially getting Trey Lance too, and then sitting him behind Teddy Bridgewater for a year. But you're going to sense a common theme with my analysis, where I think that Trey Lance needs at least 1 year. I don't think he should be thrust into a starter role, or he's going to have a very similar start to his career like Josh Allen did. I personally think that Denver, Dallas, and the Giants are all going to stick with their quarterbacks, along with the Chargers and Minnesota, which leaves the Patriots. And I think realistically, both Zach Wilson and Justin Fields will be off the board. And then you have Trey Lance and also Mac Jones. I think there are only a few coaches in the NFL that would be able to reach Trey Lance's full potential, and Bill Belichick might be one of them. Although it's very, very tempting to put Trey Lance on a team like the Patriots, I think the more realistic and the better fit for them would probably be Mac Jones. The Patriots have had that Alabama connection for years. We've seen a lot of players from Alabama wind up on the Patriots. I could see that again here. And also, the Patriots were the most active team in free agency last year, or this year I should say, on the offense. They signed the 2 best tight ends. They got 2 receivers. It's not like Mac Jones would be walking into a bad situation by any means. Although I don't see any quarterbacks really slipping after 15, some other notable teams that do need to draft a quarterback, you have the Washington football team, the Chicago Bears are definitely in dire need, Pittsburgh should be looking for an option post Ben Roethlisberger, and don't be surprised if the Saints were to maybe take a shot at a quarterback. There's no guarantee that Jameis Winston can be a long-term answer for this New Orleans team, and I don't know if Taysom Hill would be a perfect fit to be a starting quarterback for years to come for this team, so they may be looking for a quarterback for the future. But I think at this point I've covered all I want for this episode of The Tailgate. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe and like, why not? Alright, that's going to do it for me today. I'll see you guys next time. See ya.